So my name is Robert Good. I'm an artist based in Cambridge, and I'm interested in art, I'm interested rather in words and text and language and knowledge and the way that it's migrated from analog to digital, from books to bytes, from offline to online. And you know, during my lifetime, I've seen that migration from libraries, having to go to libraries, having to find the books, and then find that the books are out of print or they're already out, and you can't necessarily find the knowledge that you want. And the old way of doing things was very slow, very labor intensive, and it was very kind of restricted relative to the information explosion that we've had over the last 20, 30 years through the internet. So I combine, working with analog and thinking about books as our means of understanding the world with bytes and with digital elements. And I've taught myself Python to do some animations around some of the things that we find on the internet. And I use text from the internet, text plural, that I find online. Google Newsfeed is one, Wikipedia is another, and sometimes maybe the Daily Mail is another source of online text that I then process and repackage and represent back to people. And this is one of my animations. It's a still from it, and sadly the animation isn't working. In the transfer from home to here, the animation isn't working. So you're going to have to imagine that there's a very furious animation that's going on the screen. It's actually a demonstration of Good's third law, which states that any attempt to use technology in art never works 100% of the time. So in a way, that's proof perfect of the idea. Okay, so moving swiftly on, I was given a grant from the Arts Council to investigate the whole area of art and technology, and included in it a visit to Silicon Valley, to what I thought was going to go to the cutting edge of, you know, the ground zero of the internet, and find out what everyone's talking about, what the discussions are, what's happening, and it'd be like looking 5 years into the future maybe. So the first part is going to be a little travelogue, just to give you a flavour of what I did and what I found and when I went out there. So I flew out there, and interestingly, it was the plane was called Pin-Up Girl, which seemed like very kind of throwback to the 1990s. I didn't know still, so I thought I was maybe got the wrong plane. I was off to Las Vegas or something. And I stayed at the Flamingo Motel. I'm including those slides for a reason, which will come up in a minute. But anyway, I just like the name of it. I just thought it was rather a nice. So I was staying in San Jose nearby, and first port of call was, of course, Uncle Joe's, land of the free coffee refill. So I was ready to go. So I went to the Computer History Museum nearby, was the first port of call, just to kind of wake myself up and to kind of do a little bit of homework. And it was a fantastic museum. It was really in depth, had every aspect of computing that you could possibly imagine. Plus there was a demonstration going on from some of the very old kit, which was very kind of like dinosaurs now, kind of really old school, and ticker tape and punch cards and so on. But that was a reminder, as was the whole museum, that actually the kind of take home from this visit to the museum was how it's computing as we know it is kind of ground. It goes back a long way. It doesn't just go back to the 1950s or 40s or whenever, but people have been trying to systematize, trying to kind of make shortcuts, trying to kind of get to grips with some of the things that led to digitization, led to computing for a very, very long time, and looking at things like some of these logbooks and shortcuts to calculations was a reminder of that. And you can see the progression, really. I mean, this is a pocket calculator from the 1700s rather, Napier's Bones, and it's a shortcut. So technology and tools and ways of doing things, speeding things up, is nothing new. I rather like this one, which is I can't quite see it because I've got the toolbar along the bottom, but it's a reconstruction of a very early calculating system, and it's really nice that it's kind of human scale. Well, I'll come back to that anyway. So there were examples that predate the whole thing about bytes and electronics. I include this one just because Cambridge got a mention in there. It's very exhaustive, as I say, in terms of its coverage of everything. So Cambridge was mentioned. And there's a nice little display on can computers create, and some of the early attempts at integrating tech and the arts. Plus, it's just a kind of a retro person's delight in terms of some of the knobs and buttons that you weren't allowed to touch any of it, but it was the design aesthetic was something else. It was pretty impressive. I used to work in IT, and I actually used to work on these VAX 11780s. So there's even some of that to be had. So. It also included a lot around Photoshop and software and games, and my own interest in books to bytes. I was pleased that they kind of framed that migration of knowledge in terms of Encyclopedia Britannica to Wikipedia, because that's precisely the analogy that unwittingly I also tend to use. You think of an encyclopedia, that was the equivalent of the internet, as it were. Or the equivalent of information on your phone. That's as close as it got. That was as portable as it got before the internet. Okay, so that was my trip to the museum, which kind of gave me a kind of grounding in it. And the other thing that then I was noting as I was going around was the kind of prevalence of the big tech companies in terms of the sponsorship and in terms of their just general presence in the area. This is PayPal Park, which was sponsoring the local football team. You go down downtown San Francisco, and you bump into the offices of everybody everywhere. They're everywhere. The best one, which I couldn't get because I was driving along the freeway, was the headquarters of Zoom, and and it was like this great big enormous tower block with Zoom along the top, but I couldn't stop anywhere to take a photo of it. But everywhere there was a sense in which it was just embedded in the whole locality. Doing good is part of our code. Well, let's hope so. And then you get these kind of signs everywhere. Thank you, Google, for your help. And that was at an observatory, which again, I'll come back to that particular encounter in a bit. And then you can do the tour. You can go to, this is Steve Jobs's the original, his family home, where in that very lock-up garage is where he started his journey to Apple superstardom. And I decided to go there. You can do a whole kind of garage tour. There are a whole series of famous garages of all these tech giants from the first wave, as it were. I didn't do the full tour. I mean, it was a self-guided tour, but I did. You're allowed to kind of go up and gawp at this. So I did park my car there and just wanted to see what happened. And it was like a little pilgrimage. You just waited 5 minutes and you'd see another car come up and you think, I bet that's somebody. And lo and behold, so somebody came out. So I went up to him and just said, do you mind me asking, why you've come here? And he says, this was Oliver, I think his name was, from Austria. And he'd come on this pilgrimage. He said, last time I was in the area a few years ago, I couldn't make it. So I promised myself next time I'd come and I'd bring, and next time I'm going to bring my family as well. So there was a real sense of the area being just imbued with the whole thing. And the car next to the one that I was parked up and I noticed the number plate was Pony AI. So it's everywhere and it's part of everything. I also went to the Apple Infinity Loop. This is Infinity Loop. You can hardly tell. You can just about see the curvature of the building behind the trees, but it's like some sort of James Bond hideaway. It is on the one hand, it's very impressive, but on the other hand, it's completely inaccessible. You have these huge bunkers that you're not allowed to go down, and on the left-hand side, you can see this kind of rather slightly sinister looking. I assume it's the security guards. where they check you in and out. And this, then you get these kind of buses with the windows smoked over, kind of every so often bussing people in and out. So it kind of had a slightly sinister undertone, I suppose, maybe is how I thought of it there, but I'm sure it's not really. And then opposite, directly opposite, you can go to their massive mega store, Apple Superstore, which is kind of like the little one in Cambridge, but you know, imagine it, you know, times 20 or something like that, and everything is just perfect as you would imagine. And the store assistants, I don't know, you could imagine that they were part robot themselves. They were so evangelical, so kind of, you know, perfect in their delivery, in their kind of, and I said, oh, I'm sorry, actually, you know, I have to confess that I've got a Samsung, you know, my phone is not even an Apple. And she kind of looked at me with a kind of pity in her eye and, you know, just said, never mind, and just carried on with the spiel as before. So there we go. That was the Apple headquarters. And I also went to the Googleplex, which has kind of got this reputation for being open and fun. And indeed, you got the coloured bikes, and it was very open. And apparently, unlike the Apple Infinity Loop, you can wander around there and just see it for yourself. And they do indeed play volleyball during their lunch hours, and it's all kind of seems perfect. But of course, I couldn't go inside anywhere. Building 42, I thought might have the answer to life, the universe, and everything, but. I think actually that is the canteen, which there might be more truth to that than there might be right. But again, there was a sense of it being impenetrable. But just sitting outside, I could listen in on, eavesdrop on kind of the conversations of the people going by. And I do remember one conversation. He was talking about. He said, and in 5 years' time, we're going to be able to wake people up at the optimum time. And he was so, you know, he's talking about this to the next person, and he was, you know, thinking because so presumably you'd have wearable tech. You kind of monitor their breath. I mean, I'm surmising now that what he was meaning was that they have wearable tech, monitor your brain waves. When you're refreshed enough, then you'll gradually be woken up back into the world. And on the one hand, well, so he was thinking, you know, presumably thinking this is fantastic, and I was thinking, well, you know, it's just taking away my agency even more. I'm not even allowed to set my own alarm clock anymore, you know. So it was a very strange environment, and it was very strange to be thinking that this is really where all these decisions are being made, and all these things that are happening on our behalf. And then just across the road, just across the road, there was another one being built. This is another new Google complex as well that was just coming online, or was going to come online. So then I went to do some arty things and to meet with, I had a whole program of meeting artists, and a lot of people that I interviewed and did little podcast chats with and spoke to, and to try and get a flavour of what was going on. And I also went to as many kind of art events and art things as I possibly could. And strictly speaking, I didn't really find that it was as, you know, I didn't find what I was expecting in a way. I was expecting, maybe naively, I was expecting that, you know, everywhere, that everybody will be talking, living, breathing, sleeping tech, and the artists would all be engaging with it, and there'd be a sense of urgency because of all this tech around and all the history of it. That's what everybody would be doing. But actually, it wasn't. It was just like anywhere else. It was just. It was anywhere really in that respect. It wasn't I'll go on to kind of my thoughts and conclusions in the next section, but just to kind of set the scene that it was kind of very mundane in that respect, and I left enough room in my schedule to be able to ask everybody, you know, is there somewhere you'd recommend? Am I missing somewhere? Is there somebody I should be speaking to? Is there somebody I'll be going to? And I'm sure I didn't get to everywhere, but it wasn't as though everybody said, you're right, you've got to go here if you're interested in this is where it's all happening. So that was quite a surprise in a way. So I went to the Museum of Modern Art, and that felt very, very analog in the context of my agenda or my interest in the move from analog to digital, this did feel so, I mean, of course it's a museum and it's kind of looking backwards and it's a historical record, but compared to the digital arts and so on, it just kind of reinforced, you know, that sense of stasis around the pre-digital age. And Good's law came into effect once again. There's about two things in the whole museum that kind of seem to possibly have any sort of digital content, and one of them wasn't working. So again, that seems to be a kind of a truism. I went to the San Francisco Mint where they were doing an exhibition of augmented reality. So I put on my goggles for that. And that was fantastic. And I did it the same day as I went to the museum, and it was totally chalk and cheese. And probably a number of you may well have done this as well, the augmented reality where you put the goggles on and you look around the room and you see things that you can't see when you take the goggles off and so on. So, and I've done it before as well, but this was a particularly delightful one. It was very kind of steampunk in its aesthetic, and the actual stuff that, you know, that you saw, a lot of kind of dragons and kind of, you know, stuff that might be in computer games maybe, is a very particular aesthetic, but it was very delightful. I did find it, I came away really buzzing from it. Actually, it was a favourite, even though it was not necessarily cutting edge technology, but it was good as it went along. Although even there, and that's kind of, so if you put the goggles on in that chair, you know, you'd have some sort of artwork that came to life, and it would be fantastic. But again, they couldn't get so I said, well, can I take some pictures because I want to document this for my project? And they said, oh, and they couldn't make it work on my phone. So I'm afraid you're going to have to imagine that, which in a way is kind of actually quite symptomatic of the whole thing about AR, and you know, it's fine if you've got the goggles on, but anybody else is kind of excluded. So you're all excluded from this experience I've had, and it's, you know, it's not easy to be both analog and digital at the same time in some ways. But I like this quote that I came across at the San Francisco Exploratorium by an artist called Jasper Johns. When something is new to us, we treat it as an experience. We feel that our senses are awake and clear. We are alive. So I did enjoy that, and I did think that was an interesting little part of my visit. This was one of the many artists that I spoke to during my stay. This is called, he's called Shamsha, and he runs an organization called 01, which was one of the places that I wanted to go to in San Francisco, where they engage with the local community and people who may not have a particularly privileged background, but they teach them art and technology as a way to kind of give them a project to get their teeth into, and a skill, and a community project. And it was a great project. But again, it's probably not necessarily something that you couldn't find elsewhere. It wasn't as though that was necessarily something that could only have happened in San Francisco. But that was it was nice to catch up with him and to chat. And this is a lady called Kirsten Bach, who was part of the Exploratorium team, which again runs art and technology exhibitions. And this was, again, this is very analog. I mean, this is kind of more kind of science museum or natural history museum, but it was rather good. This was parabolic sound mirror. So I could speak to her across that distance, each of us sitting in our little parabolas, and you could hear them perfectly clearly. And this artist called Jonathan Keats, I went to a lecture that he was giving on the idea of the possibility of giving plants the vote. Which was very interesting actually, and I'll come back to him at the end of the talk. And I went to art openings and everything that I possibly could pick up on during my stay. Oh, and a little bit of sightseeing as well. This was Monterey Bay. Okay, so that gives you a flavour of what I did whilst I was there, and so now I kind of want to share some reflections, some thoughts. Okay, so what did it all mean to me in terms of my own context and my own agendas? And I came home and my brain was completely full up, actually. I say, although I maybe didn't find exactly what I was looking for, I certainly was kind of quite overwhelmed, to be honest, by all the different things that I found myself thinking about. You know how if you go away from somewhere, if you have a project like this, which is a research project, which gives you a chance to step away from your own everyday and kind of reflect on it, as it were, well, literally in my case, from a distance, you kind of scope it out. And the more I started thinking about the role of technology in our lives, the kind of more overwhelmed I found myself becoming or feeling. So I've jotted down kind of 10 headings for different things that came out of it. And I thought of a couple more today, actually, after I'd already sent the slides to Judith. But there are a couple more headings that I would have liked to have included. But most of these are taken from my notebooks that I made at the time. Any one of these we could have a whole talk on. So I'm only really just going to introduce the subject and to kind of share with you these as thoughts that I'm thinking about in my own work. And something that we can then possibly pick up on in the discussion if we want to. They're not based on I'm not an academic. This is not based on a kind of the academic discourses so much as more my reflections, my standing back and trying to make sense of things. So there will be overlaps with I'm sure with academic discourses and other people who've obviously been working on this area, but again, that's something that's up for discussion. Okay, so the first one, becoming cyborg. Just the first kind of digital encounter that I had was before I even boarded the plane, and when I realized that I couldn't have even got to Silicon Valley without technology. It's so embedded now in what we do, in everything that we do. Without a mobile phone, I simply would not have been able to book a ticket, do my passport, get on the plane or anything. And then the dystopian nightmare happened the night before when I couldn't upload my COVID pass to prove that I was negative, even though I'd had the thing and I'd got the thing. It just was, computer says no. And we've all been there, we've all done that, but it just made me realize just how much we are dependent now in a way that's on the one hand self-evident and everyday, but also made me stand back and think about the dynamic of that. And it started making me thinking about wearable tech, and a biro is wearable tech. You know, it depends how we want to define technology, but of course we've now got to Fitbit and watches, and we now see people wandering around having conversations with invisible people through the earpieces. And I just thought, you know, I got so frustrated with not being able to prove who I was and what my status was. I thought, just chip me now, you know, in 50 years time, is everybody going to be chipped? You know, we're being kind of potentially, are we, well, the question is, are we being forced down this channel towards this kind of cyborg kind of digital identity? And if so, well, you know, where does it logically end? The second one was digital surveillance. Again, nothing necessarily particularly new. We're aware of it, but it seems to be becoming more and more apparent. This was a lovely exhibit at the San Francisco Exploratorium called Becoming Chelsea. I'm sorry you can't see the title there with the artist's name, but these were attempts at about 20 different reconstructions of the possible face of Chelsea Manning, who hit the headlines a few years ago. And from DNA samples, these are possible faces, and it explores the idea of our kind of our own digital face and well, ownership of. Again, I wanted to upload another. Yeah, the thing is, the field is moving so fast. I think it was only a couple of days ago, I can't remember which actor denied a story that was in the paper. Sorry, Bruce Willis, that he'd sold the rights to his own face. and I'm thinking, you know, where is this going? This was another rather nice artwork that's online at the moment by an artist called Dries de Porter. And he takes, so on the right hand side you've got the open camera. So these are not actually surveillance cameras. These are actually open source cameras that anybody can look at around the world, with all the people you know, coming and going. And then he takes a picture from Instagram, and he tries on the left hand side, somebody has uploaded their picture to Instagram, and there she is posing for the camera. And she's got no idea. So, and on the right, you can see that that's her as well there in the picture. And it kind of nicely puts together that sense of freedom that we have on the left, where we think we're doing something unique and individual, and nobody, you know, nobody's aware of it, and yet it's already there. You're already on camera already, and that sense of surveillance and kind of claustrophobia around your own personal space and your own personal movements is something that is of course very interesting. And there are so many flavors of this. I came across this one a while ago, Undeclared Pools in France Uncovered by AI Technology. It's not quite the same as it's kind of digital surveillance. It's not facial recognition, but computers are kind of uncovering things just through algorithms and through technological ways of checking up on people, and of course in some cultures and in some countries it's way further advanced than it is here. Erosion of autonomy. This is a kind of a bit of a mixed bag here, this one. There are kind of various things I'm kind of grasping towards. One of the things that I was struck by in the museum was the ways in which pre-digital things were kind of human size, human scale. You could in theory make one of these early calculators. It's analog in the sense that you could make it, you could put it together in a way that a lot of technology now is kind of black box. If it breaks, that's it, you throw it away. It's not repairable. You can't see inside it. It's kind of magic, you know. It does it. You put in the input, the numbers, you get the right result out. You couldn't repair it. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't make one yourself, really. And so I was just kind of grappling with that idea in which things have now become black boxes to us, and to the extent that they have, to what extent it becomes like magic. You know, we are kind of we're taken out of the equation. The equivalent would be something like cars, where, you know, you used to be quite common to, you know, maintain your own car, and now, you know, if something doesn't work, you know, on the AA on the roadside, well, I'm sorry, mate, you're going to have to get the whole thing, you know, the whole kind of computer thing, you know, swapped out. I can't fix it for you. So there's I'm kind of thinking about that in some sort of a way in which that change has kind of factored us out, and possibly related, possibly not. This is a really big thing for me. This is something that I think I'm thinking a lot about at the moment. I've called it infantilization. It seems to me that that we're not being treated as adults anymore, and so in some kind of psychology handbooks, they say that a healthy relationship between two people, you know, once you're grown up, is what they'd say is an adult relationship. You're both adults, you treat each other as adults, and you have this equality of exchange between you as adults. Whereas when there are three, so there are three actors in this model: parent, adult, child. So two adults is adult, and parent child, of course, is you know, healthy when the child is growing up and not able to take actions for themselves. And it seems to me that our relationship to tech has moved from, in the early days, it was more of an equivalence, to now it feels very much like parent child. We as consumers or on the receiving end of tech are now being treated like children. And this was at Google Googleplex, and this was they were doing some building works, and, you know, they've got some of the brightest brains on the planet there, and it's like you're at infant school, you know. they're you know, these here, and it's just like, you know, you're being checked into kindergarten or to a kind of a crash. So they kind of having this parent role, and it seems as though they're treating us like, and you know, I just not, but pardon our dust. I don't know. It's okay. I'll tell you what I think. I was not going to tell. It seemed the thing that sprung to mind when I saw that was not pardon our dust. Oh, that's really nice of them to be kind of, you know, beaver. I thought it seemed like somebody's just farted and they just said, oh, I'm sorry, I've just farted, you know, and they kind of, they don't really care. It felt kind of disrespectful. It felt kind of somehow intrusive. It felt, I don't know, I apologize. Maybe Judith, we're going to have to cut that out of the final thing, but there just seemed to me to be something wrong about the way in which they were kind of doing this, reimagining in process. And it's more like Playmobil. And on a different level, so thinking about infantilization, it's become now also our relationship to technology. This is something that really bugs me, you know, with the removal of genuine choice. So, you know, we've all come across this where you know, you're invited, there are updates available. And, you know, you get this little drop down menu of what you do about it. Well, are you going to do it now or later? Well, if you're going to do it later, are you going to do it now? Are you going to do it tonight? Or are you going to remind me tomorrow? There's nothing to say, no, thank you. You know, it's not a matter of it's just when you're going to do it. When are you going to, you know, when are you going to stop being naughty and install your update? The dynamic seems to have got out of kilter. Information overload, I'm not going to say a lot about that because that's the whole thing, but that's kind of quite common. But the whole notification process and attention economy and things like that is now becoming something, there's just too much. We just cannot process everything that is being sent our way. And you know, again, thinking back to analog, just thinking about, excuse me, you know, you could consume a newspaper once a day and that's plenty, and you know, then you can get on with your life, or look at the 9 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news or the radio in the morning, and then that's it. But the notifications just don't stop coming. Contested reality, again, we know about this. We can no longer take things for granted. We just don't know anymore what's true and what's false. Putin assassination attempt in 22, that was false, you know. Zelensky video and deep fake. This was, most people weren't fooled by it, but how long before we are? So all of that, and again, that's not necessarily new. I was thinking also in terms of the metaverse and how that's coming on stream. Again, at the moment, that seems, you know, I don't think many people are going to think that's reality, but potentially that's the direction of travel. Where we have this reality, and it's just going to be more and more difficult to work out what's true and what's not. This is from the official Meta website about the metaverse. I'll leave that there. I might come back to that image. I mean, yeah, it kind of just, I'm fascinated. Okay, I'm fascinated by this image. This is on they say that this is the official image to do with the metaverse. And they're turning their back on the natural world and they're gazing into this kind of nothingness. And that just seems like the perfect kind of metaphor for what's happening. Got no idea what's going on behind him, looking at totally nothing, but enveloped in a different world. The machines that I've been doing a lot of reading as well around this. This is a fact. I just parked this here. If anybody's interested in that, this book. This is just a short story written 100 years ago in I think the 1920s, amazingly prescient of elements to do with the metaverse and new technology and the internet. The rise of AI. Just put that one out there again, a bit like Frankenstein. You know, at the moment, AI, there's lots of different flavors of AI, but is there going to be this moment where suddenly the monster, the machine comes to life and actually genuinely takes on their own autonomy? I don't know. There's no evidence of it happening soon, but certainly in the computer museum, that was something that was some of the talking heads on the future of IT and technology, we're certainly talking in those terms. Who's in charge? That's another area, and you know, the way in which it's regulated or not regulated, or it's just in the decisions are being made in the hands of a relatively few number of individuals, or a relatively few number of people who are controlling the agenda or the discourse in a way that, you know, we're used to. You know, we know that our democracy is not perfect, and political systems in general are not perfect, but there's at least some element of conversation around it, which it just seemed to me that seems to be very lacking at the moment. And things like algorithms, we know that they're problematic, and this image is not necessarily terribly suitable in the sense that it's talking about gender bias, which of course is a huge thing. But my point was more that, again, I was trying to find it, but I couldn't. There was a hearing, and I'm not sure if it was a trial or what it was recently, and the judge or somebody asked them, you know, where is this information held, or on your computers, or how many of your computers have got this information, or maybe it was something about how did your algorithm come to this conclusion? And the answer was, we don't know. There's no way. We don't know. We can't work out. You know, the system is such that it's not ungovernable, but you can't get any longer answers to some of these questions about who's in charge or how it's being done sometimes. Are we addicted? This is a book that I've had for a while, and we're aware of things like the attention economy, and how in the last 10 years or so, the internet and the internet experience has moved from being a relatively adult healthy, you know, you do what you want, you take what you want and so on, to this kind of piped environment where we're just constantly being piped with stuff, and to keep our addiction and to keep us hooked and to keep us online. And this book is a book from one of the tech insiders to how that works, and how you effectively short circuit the natural psychological processes that we have in our brains adopt subconsciously, and how you play on those in order to maximize attention, and how addictive that is. I'll come back to that in a minute. And it's a bit like, I was trying to think of an analogy to this. It's a bit like, we all know that fast food, you know, could be really, you know, we know it's bad for us, but we know, like, as a treat, you know, or maybe the calories, we know that they put the calorie counts on, but we know, you know, we're still, you know, I'm the same as the next person. The difference is that for most people, or for a lot of people, I mean, sometimes fast food is a choice because of income, or as a necessity, but assuming you have genuine choice, at least you go into a supermarket, you can choose to have fast food or not. There are other options available. The thing about the fast foodedness of the internet now is that there doesn't seem to be much of an option there. You know, we're being force-fed fast food, as it were. You know, if I wanted to get to America, I've got to, you know, do everything via my smartphone, and I've got to then sign up to all these things that I don't necessarily want to sign up to. So we don't seem to have much choice in the menu that we're being offered, which seems to me to be problematic. Is any of this new? You know, you can go back through history and find examples of most of these dynamics playing out, not necessarily in the context of digitization and technology. There was a great one in the museum. The earliest known cases of spam is from 1864, when this guy writes to the Times about a telegram that he didn't ask for. I have never had any dealings with Messrs. Gabriel, and I beg to ask, by what right do they disturb me by a telegram, which is evidently simply the medium of advertisement? A word I'm sure from you, I feel sure, put a stop to this intolerable nuisance. So to some extent, you know, that is, you know, life is as it is. People are how they are. People are going to explore explore and exploit the system, no matter what it is. So, to what extent is that new? Okay, right. So, I want to wrap up in about hopefully in about 5-10 minutes. I want to run through what I'm thinking of doing, and my own next steps, and a few just reflections and final comments, and then hopefully we can have a little discussion before we close. I've called it a cybernetic meadow. I'm thinking about kind of pushing back. I found myself wanting to push back more and more. I'm getting more kind of cross and angry in my old age about some of these things. And I noticed that it's interesting that whether or not there's a discourse around this, whether it's just me or whether there are others and so on, but there does seem to be a little bit of pushback against this. And I noticed just here that just recently there was this year's Outdoor Film Festival, and the theme was breaking the frame, resisting technology in the digital age, which was, you know, perfectly timely, it seems to me. And thank you to the organisers for including my animation as part of that. I'm sorry that I couldn't get along to it as I was away, but that's exactly the type of thing that I've started to be thinking about. So how does that play out? And going back to being at the Flamingo, one of the nicest pieces of serendipity from the trip was I chose the Flamingo Hotel because I liked the name, and it was cheap and it had a nice pink neon flamingo outside. But unknown to me, that directly opposite the Flamingo Motel is the School of Visual Philosophy, which was this artist collective of people who were doing everything for themselves in that kind of community way. And it was a very in many ways a very traditional setup. It had these lovely kind of studio spaces with these lovely printing presses, and then they had this place where they were doing a forge and they were making stuff, but it was all physical and handmade, and just in the midst of all these thoughts about technology, and they had an open day that very weekend, so it was just perfect. And I went along, had a long chat with them all, and it was just kind of re-grounded me, and it just was a reminder. And again, it's self-evident really, or it should be, that this comes first, and that sense of the physical, the human interaction. I found myself the other day apologizing for not having been on social media as much as before, and I'm thinking, well, hang on a second, why should I even be apologizing for that? But there's that sense in which we need to kind of there's an opportunity to kind of rebalance. So coming home in Cambridge here, I've really enjoyed, I've joined the Makespace workshop group, which is just down the road in Cambridge. And I've been teaching myself, or being helped with by the wonderful people there, some skills around technology. It's still using a technology interface, but it has a physical dimension to it. A lot of my work has been around Python programming, making digital animations, very screen-based. It's just great to kind of come away a bit and see something being made, even if the machine is still making it. I could talk a little bit more about the kind of machine interface in this particular example if we wanted to. But anyway, so I've been just teaching myself some routing, some CNC routing, which has this digital interface. And in a nutshell, this digital interface is not asking me every 5 minutes, have you shared this with your friends? It hasn't asked me, can I have access to all your photos? It hasn't told me, you know, would you like to try this project? It has, you know, it's much more an adult interface, it seems to me. It seems to be a pre-internet type of an interface. It seems to be a more healthy interface, even though it's technology. So I'm not trying to be a Luddite. I'm not suggesting that we just chuck everything away and do everything by hand. So the main thing that I'm going to do as a result of this is later this month, I've got this wonderful opportunity in Middlesbrough to take some of my artwork, some of my existing work, and some new animations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of build the internet. I'm going to do a nice big installation around these animations that's human-sized. Instead of everything being on the phone, which is too small, or on a screen, which is just kind of feels like you're locked in and this I'm hoping that we're going to be able to walk around and through and experience some of these things on a human scale, and that's something that I'm interested to try. Plus it's going to be building stuff, so again there's that element of making, which for me I think is very exciting. I've called it a cybernetic meadow because there's this poem from 1967 by someone called Richard Building. This is the first verse of it, and it says, "I like to think, and the sooner the better, of a cybernetic meadow where mammals and computers live together in mutually programming harmony, like pure water touching clear sky. Well, if ever that was a kind of a utopian image of what digital integration might be, that's it. I don't believe he's being ironic here. I genuinely do think that he's thinking that. Interesting, the title is called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, which was actually used as the title for a very well-known series of documentaries. I think it was a set of 3 documentaries of the same name. It's called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. If you haven't seen that, strongly recommended as an investigation into technology. So those are some of my working drawings. I'm afraid I can't show you anything about what's going to happen in Middlesbrough because we haven't done it yet. And it's a prototype, which is very exciting for me because normally I'm quite controlled and I won't let anything out of the studio or off my computer until it's just as I want it. But this is a chance to try something new. So I've just got some working drawings, and I should credit my good friend Liz Brady, who's agreed to kind of curate my work for me and kind of help me make this happen. And she's going to be there to help me to put this all together and to do this. So I'm really excited by that opportunity. And I've got some new animations that I'm working on. One of them around notifications. I've got a truth bot, which I'm rather pleased with, actually, dare I say it myself. It trawls through Wikipedia and extracts facts from pages, and it will just wander through Wikipedia on its own and report back with facts for days on end, just outputting facts in this endless list of stuff that we'll never get to the bottom of. Okay, final. These are 2 or 3 things I was thinking about this talk, and I was putting it together. And again, I don't know if it's serendipity or what, but I've got about 3 articles from, these are, as you can see, the date on this one, 17th of September. So that's last week. I came across several articles that just kind of popped out to me. Maybe I'm thinking about this idea of digital resistance. Maybe I'm thinking about these ideas and pushing back and so on. Maybe, I don't know if the discourse really is pushing back or whether I'm just noticing articles that chime, or maybe Google is just feeding me articles that is chiming with what I think. So who knows? But anyway, for what it's worth, I came across 3 or 4 articles. I just wanted to quote from you. Is Silicon Valley's golden era coming to an end? The public perception of tech at large has also shifted, with 68% of Americans saying they believe tech firms have too much power and influence in the economy, up from 51%. I thought that was a big jump. And if that, again, if it's true, if it's real, then that seems like a big jump. And also not only a big jump, but also a big percentage, I would say. So I came across that one. Came across this review of a book that's just come out, which I haven't yet read, called The Chaos Machine, with the strapline, The Inside Story of How Social Media Rewired Our Minds and Our World. And what I loved about the review of it, again, as you can see just last week, at some point we'll look back on these days in bewilderment. In other words, what's happening to us? You know, how have we let ourselves get to this point where we have become so passive in this dialogue, in some of these issues? I've known about this for a while. The author who wrote this book, Hooked, had this kind of Damascene moment. He was part of, I believe, the original kind of tech startups making people addicted to their software. I apologize to him in advance if he wasn't, but I believe that he was actually part of the industry. And so then he wrote the book, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. So now he's saying, he's almost kind of, it's a bit like the guy who invented the scroll down refresh button. I think it was him, but anyway, one of these kind of devices. You know, he's mortified by what he's done and what he's given the world. You know, and that he's just made us more addictive, or because people talk of it as being like a slot machine. You know, I'll just have another kind of put on the slot machine handle and see what the refresh gives me. So he's kind of done a 180-degree turn, and he's now written how to unhook yourself from his own material. And this one was a real light bulb moment. And this again is just a week ago. Oh, well, how getting more or can improve your life and even make you a nicer person. This was in the paper just a week ago. And the article itself, though, I didn't think was actually particularly insightful. I've been interested in ideas of the sublime for a while in my work, and I've done some other pieces of work about the sublime. But I just, the next quote on the next page, in a way, I wanted to read it to you before you see it, but you're going to see it before I get to read it to you. But I don't know what you'll think of it, but I thought, you know, this was one of those kind of penny drop moments for me. We recently interviewed 320,500 people from 26 countries about what brings them awe, and no one mentioned their smartphone. And I suddenly, you know, you could not put that better. For me, that was exactly that missing element to all of this discourse, the idea of what makes us go, wow, what brings us those sublime moments. It's not that they can't come through a digital experience, because things like that, my augmented reality, I really did go, wow, you can have genuine digital moments which are awesome, but they're fewer and fewer and further between now in the way in which I think that technology has developed. So I thought that was a really nice way of summarizing all that seems to be missing in the dynamic as it currently is. So something like this: thank you, Google. This is at the Lick Observatory. This was one of another moment of serendipity. Right on the top of the hill, you can just about see, there's the observatory right up there. By chance, this very observatory was an observatory that I'd done some work on. I knew about before I went, but I didn't know I was going to. I did before I went, but I didn't at the time of planning the trip, that how close I was to the Lick Observatory. And it's crumbs, I should know, but it's from the end of the 1900s, turn of the last century, around that time, this fantastic telescope. And so I went to visit it because this is my book that I bought in a secondhand bookshop about 10 years before, and that's the same Lick telescope and the Lick Observatory. And it's called How to Know the Starry Heavens. And I haven't got time now to tell you all about the projects that I've done based on this book, but going back to this idea of awe and astonishment and wow, the wow factor, it was great that it was just right on my doorstep. So to have that, I've done some work on the sublime, I've done some work on what makes us go wow, and to have that as a counterpoint to my thoughts around the digital environment, I think was a great squaring of the circle, a kind of great counterpart, the two halves, I think, of what I've been interested in. But I didn't realize until I got that quote, and then I saw them kind of fit together. Finally, I'm doing some new podcasts that are going to launch next week, and they include a digital element. Not all of them, and they're not necessarily based on, with people that from Silicon Valley. I've got a bonus episode that are going to be some snatches of conversations that I recorded with people out there. This is Dr. Pip Thornton in Edinburgh, and she is resisting technology, and so she doesn't want her face and her information online. And I had a fascinating conversation with her about her work as an artist and her interest in this whole area. This is Gudrun Filipska, who has a project called Arts Territory Exchange, where she it's a bit like an artist dating service. She pairs up people who are working in remote parts of the world and puts them in touch with each other to either collaborate or to share and exchange ideas. And she's been thinking about technology, and she's got an amazing story about her experience with Instagram, which I won't spoil. But she wants now to build a ham radio so that she can have these conversations not through the internet. So she wants to get people to kind of go back to kind of, again, it's this, I was saying about technology, it's not about kind of being a Luddite, but ham radio, she's teaching herself electronics. So it's again that sense of being able to be part of the thing that you're using rather than just outsourcing it to somebody else and on their terms. So if you've got your ham radio sets, then you can then you've got a sense maybe of regaining some sense of autonomy in the process. Rebecca, who's here tonight, we had a fantastic conversation about, Rebecca teaches silversmithing, and we were talking about the possibility of doing craft and silversmithing and those types of activities in the metaverse, and whether that would be a good idea and what that would involve. So that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Rebecca. And finally, last, so this artist, Jonathan Keats, who wants to give plants the vote, I had a conversation with him about his work. He is based in San Francisco, and he's been very insightful to me. I've had a number of conversations with him around art and technology, and it's an ongoing project. And I'm hoping that he will be coming to Cambridge either in person or possibly will have to be virtually. It depends if we can get him to come over for a project in the spring as part of the Cambridge Festival. So that will be something to look forward to, and a great kind of bit of forward momentum from my project. It would be lovely if we could get him to Cambridge to engage him with some of his ideas around, well, maybe I won't say too much more now, but he's got some fantastic ideas, and it will be brilliant to get him to come over if we can. Okay, we must stop. Thank you very much for your time. This is the final penultimate slide. I left the museum of computing, and you know, you have these things, these kind of little exit things where you kind of write a little postcard about your experiences. How has technology changed your life? Practically everything has changed. Literally everything I do uses a computer, and I was glad I was born in this era. So there you go, that's food for thought. Thank you very much. I should say thanks also to the Arts Council for funding this and for making this possible for me to do it. I hope that's been of some interest, and at least I've been able to share what I've been up to over the last 6 months, and I'll be delighted if there's any discussion or questions that you might have. Thank you very much.